Hello everyone, welcome to the unofficial Roblox tutor, and today we're going to be learning scripting lesson 1.1, understanding index notation. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the lesson. So today we're going to be learning about index notation symbols. So dot, colon, and square brackets. So what do these all do? Well, when you're accessing properties and instances inside the game, you use the dot syntax, right? So when you're going game.workspace.part, right, you're indexing the information inside of this instance, okay? And an instance is just a fancy table that contains properties, methods, and events, right? So that's what we're going to be using the dot syntax for. We can also use the colon syntax. The colon syntax is used to access functions. The kind of functions that we would be accessing are pretty much the stuff that we used earlier in the first lesson when we were working with find first child and find first ancestor. These is what this is used for, and I'll go more in depth when we start doing the code. And then square brackets. Square brackets are used for indexing different variables into that value. So like, let's say you didn't want to have to use, this string name, right? You could pass in a variable with the string name directly into it. So we'll also do that in code. And last but not least, when you're working with scripts, right? When you're writing your code, it's impertinent that you understand this syntax because it is used everywhere. Everything you do in Roblox, interacting with the API, deals with these index notation symbols. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the lesson. Hello everyone, welcome back. So we're going to be learning about the dot syntax and colon syntax, as well as the bracket syntax. And I'm going to give you some explanations. Alright, so in the previous lesson, we learned about the parent method and the child method. And I even gave you bonus methods like find first child and find first ancestor, right? And if you notice something that when you're doing the indexing, right, why do we use this dot syntax, right? Well, I kind of already gave it away because we're indexing information inside of tables and instances, right? So what is an instance and what is a table? Well, an instance is just a fancy user data that Roblox gives us that has information stored in a secure table. What does that mean? Well, if you go, let's make a table, we're gonna make it called part. Alright, in this table, we can also add name equals John Doe. Right, we can also add bird color equals bird color dot new, right, bright green. And we can also go transparency, right? It's equal to 0.5. Right? And we can even give this thing a parent. We can say parent equals part, right? Now, this isn't going to act exactly like a part because there's a lot of methods and information that's missing to make a part, right? But what we do have are some of the base properties like name, bird color, transparency, and part. Well, when you're accessing instances, this is technically what you're accessing on Roblox site. A table containing properties, right? And this is all it is at the end of the day, right? Now, where does the dot syntax, the colon syntax, and the square bracket syntax come into play? Well, I'll show you now. So, just like with the other parts, we'll just call this one part table. Right? We'll just call this one part table. We can go part underscore table dot bird color transparency. We can even get the name, right? And that's cool. That's what the dot syntax is. That's what the dot syntax is for. To allow us to index into different tables and to make sure we can get the information we need. Now, what does this colon syntax? Because this doesn't seem to work. Like if I do a colon mean, this doesn't work. Like you don't see nothing popping up. If I was trying to print this, I'd get a name error. Right? You see it being an error already. Alright, so what is the colon syntax for? I'll show you. So you see how we go colon find first ancestor and then we pass in a variable part, right? Or actually the information, the data type part, right? Right, well, basically, what's going on here is that there's actually a function, right? And I'll teach you about functions later, but I'll show you later. So I'm gonna make the same thing you see up here, find first ancestor, right, equals collision, and the first argument for anything inside of a table is self. And I know it's gonna sound weird, but just think of self as an imaginary first argument that's always there. You should always index it when you put functions in tables, right? And then whatever parameter. So we're just gonna say name. Right, so now when I go part table, I can go part table find first ancestor, and you see, you got a function that can go find first ancestor, or I can go part table on find first ancestor. And that's basically what all this dot syntax and colon syntax is doing. It's allowing us to index a table or a function in different and unique ways. And when you use a colon, it automatically passes itself as the first argument, right? But when you just do dot, you don't have to tell it what the self is, right? So that's what's interesting and unique. Like when you do colon, you just get the name right here. See? So that's how that works. Right, and then what do we mean by this bracket? Because I showed no examples of the bracket. Well, when we go part table, right, brackets, square brackets, we can actually pass in a variable. So let's make a variable called name equal that to, yeah, let's put name. Right, you want to put name. Well, now we can pass in name. You see that? And with that, we can go print part table name. And if we click run right here, you can see we print name. Yep, and it's like the bullets. There you go, John Doe. Right, and that's basically how this all works. Alright, well, I hope you guys learned a little bit more about the dot syntax, the colon syntax, and the square bracket syntax. Let's end it right here. See you guys later in the next video. Subscribe for more lessons.